And first, from the outside, the control surfaces. The propeller pitch on the port engine, the propeller pitch on the starboard engine. Now the flaps are extending. And now retracting. Next, test the ailerons. Followed by the elevators, the rudder, and last but not least, the cabin door, so that we can get in there and have a look inside the cabin. Now, after a quick look around the cabin, where we can even find magazines in the back of the seats, we're now in the cockpit, starting our takeoff run. The first point of interest of our flight is Caernarfon Castle, which Edward I of England started building in 1283 on the site of an old Norman moat and bailey castle that had been there for 200 years. Just over 10 years later, in 1294, both Caernarfon and the castle were sacked by Madog ap Llywelyn, leading a rebellion against the English. Recaptured the following year, building was eventually completed in 1330. It then continued to provide a defence against the Welsh uprisings until the Tudor dynasty started in 1485, when tensions between the Welsh and the English began to diminish. As a result, it fell into disrepair, but, despite this, became a royalist stronghold during the Civil War and was besieged 3 times by parliamentary forces. After this, however, it was completely neglected until 1911, when restoration work was started, and in 1969 it was where Prince Charles was invested as the Prince of Wales. And there it is, just below us on our left. Looking to the southeast, just below the aeroplane, can be seen Snowdon with the Llanberis Pass to its left. And to the northwest, at the other side of Anglesey, is Holyhead. That noise was of the flaps being extended, ready for a low-speed flight over the 2 bridges that cross the Menai Strait. The first of these that we will be flying over was designed by Robert Stephenson for the purpose of rail traffic and was completed in 1850. This, the Britannia Bridge, was a closed wrought iron box bridge supported on towers. In 1970, however, it was destroyed by a fire and had to be rebuilt. The original towers were reused, but the bridge itself was of an open girder type of construction. Reopened for rail traffic in 1972, work continued to strengthen the structure to enable a road, opened in 1982, to be added on top. Today, there is even discussion about opening a third bridge across the strait to cope with today's excess traffic. The second bridge that we fly over is the older of the two. It was designed by Thomas Telford for a road hanging from chains between two towers. Think, however, of huge bicycle chains with extra large links rather than looped chains. This bridge, originally opened in 1826, has been strengthened with the addition of cables. Today, the need for a third bridge to cope with the increased traffic is now being considered. As you heard then, the flaps are now retracted. We are now flying over Bangor with the Great Orme of Llandudno ahead of us on the horizon, and to the right of that Llandudno itself, and just to the right of Llandudno the Little Orme. The road now running parallel to us along the coast is the North Wales Expressway, the A55, and we can see how the southeast bound carriageway tunnels through the headland there, while the northwest bound carriageway runs round it. This is still, however, covered over in places, presumably for protection in areas where there might be rockfalls. This is, I assume, to be the old A55 that existed before the expressway was made into a dual carriageway in, I believe, the late 1980s. We are just coming up to the Penman Bark headland, my apologies to any Welsh-speaking listeners, through which, as can be clearly seen, both roadways are tunnelled. Flaps have now been lowered again for a slow speed flight over Conwy itself. And those beeps were the autopilot being disengaged. This had been maintaining a constant altitude for part of the flight. We now reduce our altitude to make the pass over the castle. We are now approaching the castle, and the railway line can be seen entering the closed box tunnel for the river crossing to the right of it. Next to this is the suspension bridge which, like the one across the strait, was designed by Thomas Telford and beyond this is the road bridge of 1958. The tunnel entrances that can now be seen on the left are where the carriageways of the North Wales Expressway, the A55, pass under the river. The tunnel, which was opened in 1991, was the first of its type to be built in Britain. It consists of preformed concrete tubes which were floated into position before being sunk into a trench on the river bed. We are now approaching Llandudno, at the far end of which can be seen its pier. In addition to the main pier, there also appears to be a small second pier or jetty to the left of us. As I couldn't remember seeing this when I last visited Llandudno 60 years ago with my wife, I consulted Google Earth. Interestingly, there are signs of an approach to a jetty, but no actual jetty. When I dug out my old 1-inch map, last revised in 1948, however, it clearly shows a jetty exactly where one appears in this simulation. What I still don't know is my memory at fault, or was it really not there in 1958? We are making our landing run directly towards Conwy Castle, which, like that at Caernarfon, was built by Edward I between 1283 and 1289. Unlike that at Caernarfon, it withstood the siege of Madog ap Llywelyn in 1294, and in 1399 became a temporary refuge for Richard II. During the Civil War of the 17th century, it was a stronghold of the Royalist forces, but surrendered to the parliamentarians in 1646 and was finally destroyed in 1665. Today, following restoration, it is a major tourist attraction that is classified as a World Heritage Site, and that UNESCO considers to be one of the finest examples of late 13th century military fortifications. What a terrible landing! Nevertheless, even though the slider for sensitivity to crashes is set to maximum, honestly, it hasn't told me I've crashed. And, as they say, if you can walk, or in this case I suppose swim, away from a landing, it can't be that bad. I'll just have to console myself with that.